Brace for the COVID crisis to deteriorate even further. That's Gladys Berejiklian's warning on the country's worst day of the pandemic yet again. The Premier says case numbers in the near term could be scary and hospitals stretched. But she's expecting the wave to peak in the next fortnight. There are more than 1,400 new infections and another 12 people have lost their lives. One was an unvaccinated woman in her 30s. She died at home the day after she tested positive. Kathleen Calderwood reports.
An amazing friend, a woman full of joy and laughter. These are just some of the words used to describe Jamila Yagi.
And a mother of 4 kids. It's heartbreaking. She's somebody with a large family and a really large circle of friends, and they're all heartbroken.
The list of those who've died in the outbreak is getting longer and longer.
The second person is a man in his 70s, a woman in her 60s, a man in his 80s, a man in his 70s, a woman in her 70s, another woman in her 70s from southwestern Sydney.
Almost 80% of the latest infections are in Sydney's hotspots. The hardest hit area is Canterbury Bankstown, where another 300 people have been infected. Cumberland has more than 200 new cases.
We anticipate a peak in cases in the next fortnight. So the next fortnight is likely to be our worst in terms of the number of cases.
It's all right, they just hang on.
That's left many asking questions.
If there's lockdown, then why are the cases increasing?
A reminder, children are also doing it tough in lockdown.
I can see that sometimes there are behavior changes in him. So like unnecessarily rant, or maybe, like emotional stress bust, like tearing up. So I can feel all of that.
It's important to be validating, to be optimistic, to be reassuring.
That'll be important because the worst is yet to come. Even if the cases peak in the coming fortnight, the hospitals will feel the most pressure in October. The Premier insists the health system is ready. She'll detail exactly how it'll manage its workload next week. But Gladys Berejiklian has already flagged redeploying staff and potentially sending patients to hospitals that are further from their homes so those here in West and southwestern Sydney can cope. Jeremy?
Kathleen Calderwood reporting live from Westmead. Delta is spreading most quickly among young people. Those in their 20s make up the biggest proportion of new cases. Ursula Malone has been looking at the numbers. Ursula, what is it about this age group that makes it so vulnerable?
Well, Jeremy, people under the age of 40 have only been able to book in for a jab in recent weeks, so they're less likely to be vaccinated than older age groups. At the same time, more of them need to leave home for work. So as we can see, people in their 20s and 30s make up 40% of the new cases. Now, it's 78 days since this outbreak began. Since then, 119 people have died with COVID in New South Wales. That's less than half the number of deaths at the same stage of Victoria's wave last year. Why is there such a difference? Well, the obvious explanation is they didn't have the vaccine back then. Now we do.
Ursula, thank you. The race is on to vaccinate people in Western New South Wales, where another 53 people have caught COVID. Lucy Thackeray is live for us in Bourke tonight. Lucy, Bourke has just had its biggest ever jump in cases.
Jeremy, 11 new infections were reported in the Bourke local government area to 8 p.m. last night. Bourke now has 41 active cases, while the isolated community of Ingonia has 17. We have heard that entire Indigenous households have now contracted the disease, and people have been transported 5 hours away to the nearest hospital. Testing and vaccinations have both slowed in recent days, so the message for the community is don't be complacent.
It's just an absolute steely focus for us to try and support the community, help everyone through this difficult time. I'm confident we'll get through this, but I think we will see some days in front of us with some more cases being identified.
A Dubbo nursing home is now also locked down after 5 people, 3 residents and 2 staff contracted COVID.
Lucy Thackeray in Bourke. We've got an update on the Queensland boy who's been stranded in New South Wales. 3-year-old Memphis Francis has been reunited with his parents in Brisbane. They'd become separated when the boy travelled to New South Wales to visit relatives. He's now been given an exemption to return home. The Queensland Premier has also apologised for allowing the families of NRL players to fly into the state while locked-out residents couldn't travel into Queensland.
It was not the right thing to do when we had the pause. It shouldn't have happened. Unfortunately, it did happen.
To the south, COVID cases have climbed again in Victoria. There were 208 new cases today, and Premier Daniel Andrews says people who are not vaccinated will be banned from venues when the economy reopens.